Hello, I'm Bob Reese, and I want to thank you for inviting me to present this video presentation at the International Conference and Expo on Clinical Psychology with a focus on addiction and recovery. The next slide will have my self-introduction. So where are we going to start?
Let's just start with you introducing yourself.
Hi, I'm Bob, and I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for over 23 years, but who's counting? By the time I reached my 40s, I was a functional drunk. I was holding down a high-profile job as the head athletic trainer for a NFL football team. And the NFL was, especially at that time during the 70s and 80s and early 90s, very much a drinking culture. I began to have blackouts. I wouldn't remember going to bed. I tried quitting several times, but I always started back again, and I could no longer function. I had an embarrassing moment at a convention, and I had the opportunity to either go to rehab or be fired from my job. So I spent 2 months in rehab. It was very difficult. The next year, the first year in recovery, was the hardest thing I ever did in my life. I didn't realize how low on a scale of 1 to 10 I really was until I got sober, until I found out what a real 10 on a 10-point scale meant. I'm Bob Reese. I'm an associate professor of psychology and director of the health psychology program at Jefferson College of Health Sciences. I'm a member of the research team of the International Quit and Recovery Registry as part of the Virginia Tech Carillion Research Institute. We're calling you, as a person in recovery, to help us help others. We need your stories of triumph. We need your knowledge so that we can spread it out to others. Join quitandrecovery.org and become a recovery hero. So I'm a research consultant with the Addiction Recovery Research Center at Virginia Tech Carillion Research Institute, as I mentioned before. My main focus has been on the International Quit and Recovery Registry, in which we are trying to focus on recovery from individuals in recovery. The methodology we chose to get the data that we're using is through crowdsourcing. It's reliable, it's cost effective, and we can take advantage of the technology and the internet. The registration for the International Quit and Recovery Registry consists of over 150 questions. We obtain demographics about recovery, addictions, which addictions, and behavior. As of September, we had over 8,000 online registrants from 42 countries. We put out psychometric tests every month to try to better understand the characteristics of the people in recovery. Since 2011, we've put out 120, more than 120 assessments, and we average somewhere between 150 to 200 of these being completed a month. Obviously, we want more, so tell everybody you know that may be in recovery to help us out. And by the way, we share our data, so just go to quitandrecovery.org and you can contact us. So if you go on our website, you'll get our world map. Looks something like this. And here we have a few people around the Amsterdam area who have contributed. We'd like to get more. Some of the information that we've gotten in our descriptive demographics are gender, 58% males, 42% females. Years in recovery, we have people that have up to 40 years in recovery. The main abundance of people have less than 5 years in. Race and ethnicity is mainly Caucasian who have responded. There are education levels, some college, and of interest is the number of respondents who have secondary addictions. So the number one reported addiction is to alcohol. The second is to cigarettes or tobacco, then marijuana, cocaine, and so forth down the line. But 93% of the respondents have at least one additional dependency, which kind of reminds me of when I was in rehab back in 1991. The psychiatrist told me at the time that I was part of a dying breed, in that I was just an alcoholic. I didn't have a secondary addiction. Now, of interest to you clinical folks, the most effective treatment reported is 12-step programs. Second is inpatient therapy. So on the left side of the screen, you see some of the studies that have been going on. We just finished a National Institutes of Health and National Institute of Drug Abuse grant, a 3-year study looking at the social interactome of recovery, where we are trying to determine what will work best in an online setting. There's a list of studies that are ongoing now. My particular interest is in the positive psychology areas of looking at the length of time in recovery and its correlation to subjective happiness, satisfaction with life, and grit. So what I've found is that in recovery, the longer people are in recovery, the happier they are, the more satisfaction with life they have, and the more they develop grit. Now I want to shift gears. I want to talk about application of some of the information and the interventions and techniques that I have found to help maintain recovery. And during my years in the NFL, I got interested in sports psychology, and that's taking people at the elite level and trying to make them better. So it was natural for me to look at positive psychology when I got into psychology full time. The positive psychology has 5 columns or pillars, if you will, and the one that I am interested in the most is the positive emotions. Okay, and that's what we're going to look at now. All of these interventions are on my website, drbobreese.com, and they're contained in my book, The 13th Step, Thriving in Recovery. Also, all of these, as we say in 12-step programs, are simple. They're just not easy. One reason that we want to look at positive emotions is Barbara Fredrickson's theory, the broaden and build theory. And that's where we broaden our thought-action repertoires, the happy, positive thoughts Uh, and that expands our inventory of positive thoughts and actions. And it builds our not only our physical and intellectual resources, but our social and psychological resources. And the studies have shown that it triggers upward motion to enhance well-being. That includes creativity, motivation and energy, physical health, personal growth, and the creation of more positive emotions. And besides that, it just feels good to feel good. Now, having a store of positive emotions can help fuel our psychological resilience. And one of the things that I like best is the concept of the undoing hypothesis, which goes along with this. It's like hitting the undo button on your computer. It is an antidote for the lingering effect of negative emotions. It helps undo the negative emotions. It shortens the duration of negative emotions, and it may actually slow the progress of disease. And that is what helps fuel that psychological resilience and enables you to recover readily from adversity or change. All of my exercises, techniques, or interventions, whatever you want to call them, begin with self-talk. You have to pay attention to your self-talk. Your self-talk determines your self-image. That in turn determines your performance or your behavior, and then that reinforces the self-talk. It's a feedback loop, and it keeps going around and around. And the more it goes around, the more you talk to yourself that way, the more you become, that strengthens the self-image, the more it influences your behavior. So the way to change a behavior, one way to change a behavior, is to change your self-talk. And I believe it's very simple, again, but not easy. So if you look at 12-step programs, and one of the first things you have to do is say, hi, my name is Bob, and I'm an alcoholic. Now, why is that important? You would think that would put a negative picture in your mind. But what it does is it says, now you have a choice. Prior to admitting that I was an alcoholic, I couldn't stop drinking. I didn't have a choice. Okay? Once I said, I am an alcoholic, now I had to make a decision. I had to make a choice. Am I going to keep drinking, or am I going to get sober and go into recovery? Now, just for the record, I do not think the 12 steps is the only way to be in recovery. Okay, it's the one that I went through. It is the most popular right now, but it's not the be-all, end-all, because still only 1 out of 3 people are successful in it. That hasn't changed since I was in rehab in 1991. Now, getting back to the self-talk cycle, the way you can help yourself with your self-talk is by putting a rubber band around your wrist. And every time you say something negative, especially in a particular area, like I need a drink, you snap that rubber band and say, no, that's not like me. All of these interventions or techniques are on my website. They're in my books. And this is not original. This is the rubber band has been a mainstay of sports psychology for 40 years. So the next thing I want to talk about is using your character strengths, your what are referred to as your signature strengths, your 5 top strengths. Now the VIA Values in Action website, you can have your clients take these tests or take this test for free. It's based on Seligman and Peterson's work. They developed a big book, Character, Strength, and Virtues, which is like the positive psychology answer to the DSM-5. So you will have your top 5 of these 24 strengths are what you want to build on. Recovering addicts always ask, what's wrong with me? Okay, but you can show them what's right with them by having them learn and apply their 5 signature strengths. Okay, and studies have shown that they increase life satisfaction, they increase health, and optimal performance. So if you build on what you're good at, these are the things that make you successful in life. Doesn't mean you shouldn't work on other areas of your life, but these are the ones that will make you better. So another great intervention to help keep negativity and negative self-talk out of your life is, if you're in a situation where you're not going to be there, is called a shields up intervention. Again, how to do it is on my website with a background on how I came up with it, because it's maybe the only original intervention on here. But if you could just pause for a minute, put your hand up with your fingers outspread, and imagine coming out of your fingertips an energetic bubble that encases you. Now, this bubble is semi-permeable. It will let in good information, but it deflects negative vibes, negative information. So all you have to do is put your shield up if you're going to be in a position where you know people are going to be nasty, demeaning, whatever. And this works very well when you're in big family situations and you have a particular relative that can be very critical of you. And so if you practice it, after a while, you won't have to put your hand up in front of you, which is rather off-putting to some people. You can just flick your finger and say shields up, and the shields will work for you. Another way of getting rid of negative emotions, or letting go of the negative emotions, is to give them form. If you can give them form, then you can control them. So if you can imagine that your anger or your resentment is a ball, and you throw it away, and physically go through the motion of throwing it away. Or you can flush it. Physically throw it into the toilet and flush the toilet. You'd be amazed at how well it works. Gratitude is without a doubt the most important positive emotion for a recovering addict or alcoholic. Not only is it a positive emotion, it's also a personal strength. The following 4 interventions can all be found in my book, and also in a primer in positive psychology by Chris Peterson, which is a textbook I use for the positive psychology course that I teach. I give all of my students these interventions as assignments. So the first one is savoring. Just spend time really enjoying something and going back over it, and then describe that wonderful dessert or cup of coffee or whatever it was that you had. Savor it. The gratitude letter, I have them write a letter to someone that they may not have thanked enough for something they've done in the past. Now, the caveat with that is they have to deliver the letter and read it in person. Okay, and I tell them to take a box of tissues with them, because oftentimes the recipient of the letter will start crying. A gratitude journal is just what it is. You write about things that worked well for you during the day, and then the 3 blessings could be part of the gratitude journal. What are 3 things that went well for you today? Learning to appreciate everyday life. Gratitude. Now we know there's a negativity bias to the brain. Barbara Fredrickson says it takes 3 positive things to overcome 1 negative thing. John Gottman says he deals in relationships. He says it takes 5 positive things in a relationship to overcome 1 negative one. A colleague of mine at the Pacific Institute, Joe Pace, did his doctorate on resilience, and he said it takes 11 attaboys to overcome 1 you suck. So whether it's 3 to 1, 5 to 1, 11 to 1, there is a negative bias to the brain. So we have to overcome this negativity bias of the brain. Just having positive experiences is not enough, because the positive experiences pass through the brain like water through a sieve. Okay, while the negative experiences are caught. We hold on to them. So we need to be able to engage the positive experiences and weave them into the brain. And we can do that by self-directed neuroplasticity. Jeff Schwartz says you can use your mind to change your brain, to change your mind for the better. That goes back into my concept of self-talk. In this particular instance, Mark Hansen has taken the self-directed neuroplasticity and created a technique or an intervention called taking in the good. Where you look for the positive facts, let them become positive experiences. Then you have to savor that positive experience. We've talked about that earlier. And in that way, it soaks into the brain and registers deeply in your emotional memory. So I want you to go a step beyond taking in the good. I want you to wallow in positivity. I want you to wrap it all around you, like a great athlete who's just won a major tournament. You soak in that positive stuff, like a entertainer at the end of a show. They soak it in. They take in that applause. Like kids playing out in the yard, out in the grass, or just the relaxation in a hot tub, or curling up in a blanket, and just being very comforted. So let's wallow in that positivity. So I want to take a moment and thank all my colleagues at the Addiction Recovery Research Center, especially those that work on the International Quit and Recovery Registry, and especially Dr. Bickle for giving me the opportunity to work there. You can reach me by email. There may be a setup for you to ask questions at this conference. Hopefully I'm not sure how that's going to work yet. Don't hesitate to contact me by email. The slides, references, the video are all on drbobreese.com. And all of the interventions mentioned are in my book, The 13th Step. You can also find some of them, all the gratitude ones, in a primer on positive psychology.